Thanks for joining us. We're tracking extreme winter weather across the province. Environment Canada issuing a snow squall warning across southwestern Ontario and extreme cold warnings in the northwest. In Grey Bruce and Simcoe, OPP say visibility has been almost zero, so they've closed the highway between Markdale and Flesherton after a series of crashes left several people uninjured but stuck in the ditch.
The best thing is just to not to go out. There will be detours around the side roads, which will not be maintained as well as they should be. I know the plow drivers are out trying to keep up with this weather, but it's just very hard for them to keep up. If it's an emergency, you have to go out, make sure you turn on your full headlight package. Unfortunately, with the new LED headlights and taillights, snow is not melting off them. So you need to check your headlights and taillights very frequently just for snow and ice accumulations. Don't use your four-way flashers. You may think they make you more visible, but they can prevent your brakes and signal lights not working. Also allow or reduce your speed, just so you can react to hazards quicker and you have more time. And keep a safe following distance. And don't forget to pack a bag with maybe food, drinks, blankets, warm clothes. And if you do find yourself in the ditch, don't get out. We don't want anyone to be hit on the road. Call a tow truck or call police.
Some really important tips there. Okay, you're looking live at the city of Barrie. Officials declaring a significant weather event there, saying heavy snowfall started Friday and just hasn't let up. The city is advising drivers and residents to be careful. In a news release, officials say it may not be able to keep up with roadways, bike lanes, and sidewalks getting all of those clear. So just keep in mind, it could take longer than usual to get things back to normal. We want to bring in Sophia right away. You've been watching this all for us. What are you keeping your eye on right now?
Well, unofficially, as we saw Barrie there, over 50 centimeters, 50 centimeters on the ground as we speak, and more still to come. Here's a look at the wide arching squall warnings as this Arctic air continues to pour over the very warm and very open Great Lakes. Many highways will be impacted as the dangerous travel continues into Sunday. Remember this trifecta, right? Blowing snow, drifting snow, and substantial snowfall coming down. This will make travel next to impossible at times. 400, Highway 21, Highway 6, and Highway 26. Remember, lake effect squalls are notorious for being highly changeable. 1 minute, bright blue skies, and the next minute you have whiteout conditions. So as you heard, there's some great tips. Here's a look at what radar thinks we got when it comes to snowfall over the past 96 hours. As you can see, these meandering lines were really locked into the Midland, Collingwood, Barrie, Hanover, Goderich, Kincardine, and Grand Bend areas where the totals will continue to rack up. There is still a little bit of additional snowfall to come in some of those areas for Sunday, and then an additional 15, even 20 more still to come on the Huron shores, as you'll get a bit of a break on the Georgian shores. This band lifts north into the overnight period, giving one big more healthy heaping to areas like Midland, Orillia, and Barrie before heading a little bit more south off the Huron shores for much of your Sunday. So a real shift in the directions for Sunday, but really those bands have been locked into the Barrie area, Collingwood, and Midland since Friday. It is the perfect recipe for lake effect snow. We'll talk more about it in the long range. Temperatures in the upper levels of the atmosphere are about 20 degrees colder than the warm lakes. And this cold, Shannon, is relentless. It's not going anywhere in the long range.
So tons of snow and really cold. Good combo.
Yeah, for a few weeks, maybe. It is not a pretty forecast to deliver.
Okay, here we go, January. Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
Ontario police are sharing the numbers for their festive ride campaign, which wrapped up earlier this week.
The reason we do this is because impaired driving continues to be one of the leading causes of death and injury on our highways. 49 people so far last year died in alcohol or drug-related collisions. That may be down from the previous year, but it's still far too many.
Here are some more numbers for you. Police say they charged more than 700 people with more than 1,200 impaired driving charges and made more than 9,000 ride stops from late November to New Year's Day. Now, that may sound high, but it's actually a little better compared to last year. That's when police say they charged more than 900 people and laid almost 1,500 charges. Well, it is back to school on Monday for most Ontario students, but anyone in college is keeping close tabs on this story. The union representing the province's college professors and instructors says it could start some kind of labor action next Thursday. Tyreek Reed has reaction from students.
I hope they could come to an agreement. I hope.
Outside GTA college campuses, students are preparing for the worst. But faculty at Ontario colleges and their employers both say they're determined to get a deal done.
Our objective is to keep the students in the classroom.
But that might not happen. The union representing Ontario college professors, instructors, and librarians has now issued a labor action notice. That could begin as early as Thursday, and both sides are still far apart.
There's really just been agreement on very, very small, minor items. But basically there hasn't been, in terms of any of the significant issues, there really hasn't been agreement on anything.
Bargaining between the union and College Employer Council has been ongoing for 6 months, and members have been without contracts since September. The union says their main priorities include increased staffing, appropriate workloads, and higher wages.
We're looking for 5% for each of the next 2 years, or wage increase. And the employer is offering 2% for each of the next 4 years because of inflation, right? Bringing our pay right into to compensate for the inflation that we've all felt and the affordability crisis that we're all dealing with.
In total, 200 demands have been presented according to the CEC, something it says it simply can't afford.
When we factor in all the costs that they're seeking, including wage increases, it would represent $1 billion to the colleges. And that would be a 55% increase, and the colleges wouldn't be able to accept that in the best of circumstances.
To help reach a deal, the CEC is pushing for binding arbitration, a method used in the past. But the union says that won't work this time.
Our members have sent us with a very clear mandate and negotiating concessions, right? And potentially ending up with a collective agreement that's worse than one we currently have. That's just not a viable option for us, right? The best deals, honestly, are the ones that happen at the table.
But students say the best deal for them is staying inside the classroom, and the uncertainty is taking its toll.
This is my last semester of school, so I'm a little worried about that being interrupted. Yeah, I'm not sure how the graduation requirements would be adjusted for the labor action, or if we would have to maybe redo classes or push the graduation by a semester or a year.
The union representing college faculty has not confirmed what a potential job action could look like. Talks between both parties will resume on Monday. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
Security threats are forcing a city council in the GTA to move all of its meetings this year online. As Tyler Cheese shows us, the threats allegedly stem from one councillor.
Pickering City Councilor Lisa Robinson has been a repeat guest on a podcast city officials have called extremist. The city has used clips of the podcast in a video it says shows why they need to move council meetings online.
I watched your dog take a bone that was about this big, literally out of a pork chop, and crunch the thing into powder in less than 1 minute. Why don't we take your dog to these city council meetings and let her loose?
Pickering's mayor says Robinson's fellow guest on that podcast showed up at a city council meeting and was removed by security after filming in the council chambers.
We made the determination because of the increased threats of violence, the intimidation, most of it done on social media. But even as recently as our last council meeting, we had 4 or 5 people that had to be escorted out of our chambers.
The nearly 13-minute-long video posted to the city's YouTube channel earlier this week outlines a number of other incidents involving Robinson. That includes appearing on the podcast where the host called her fellow councillors pedophiles and Nazis. Robinson later apologized and denounced the host's comments. In September, she received a 90-day pay suspension for a continued pattern of unacceptable behavior determined by the city's integrity commissioner. Since then, the city says the mayor, councillors, and staff have received several threats from her supporters.
Your day of reckoning will come.
Robinson responded to the city's move with her own video, saying the city's video is laughable.
It's honestly laughable to any reasonable person. They are the ones that are creating this fear when there is none.
But the mayor feels it's justified.
It shows proof of what we're up against, and it's time that the press and our residents get the real message in terms of what's happening.
In the meantime, some Pickering residents say they're frustrated this situation has taken center stage at City Hall.
This entire ordeal that the city has been dealing with and going through that the mayor and others have highlighted very clearly has been a massive, massive distraction from the real issues facing the city.
He feels the move to online meetings is justified, but worries residents won't engage with council as much as they do in person. But Pickering residents will be able to view meeting live streams on YouTube. And delegations from the public can also be delivered on Microsoft Teams. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Is it time to start treating alcohol more like tobacco? The U.S. Surgeon General is calling for cancer warnings on beer, wine, and other booze, saying most Americans just don't understand the risk. And as Vanessa Lee tells us, there are similar calls here in Canada.
A call from the United States' top doctor. It's time for cancer warning labels on alcohol.
When a Surgeon General sends such a message, it can be very important. I'm hoping this will have the same change that we saw with tobacco in 1964.
A growing body of research has linked drinking to 7 types of cancer, including breast and colorectal, and that even moderate drinking increases risk. In Canada, advocates say warning labels are long overdue. Senator Patrick Brazeau, who will soon be celebrating his 5th year of sobriety, introduced a bill in 2022 to add mandatory warnings on all alcohol products.
I was one of Canadians who was not aware that there was a causal link between alcohol consumption and cancer. And so, given my personal experience, I'm just trying to give back.
The alcohol industry has argued such labels are unnecessary and costly. The Canadian Cancer Society disagrees.
40% of Canadians are not aware that there's a link between alcohol and cancer risk. Canadians have the right to clear and accessible information about the health and safety of the products that they buy.
In 2017, researchers put these bright warning stickers on bottles and cans at the White Horse liquor store to see if people would cut back on their drinking. The study is cited in the Surgeon General's report as evidence labels do work.
Alcohol warning labels can increase consumer awareness of the link between alcohol and cancer, as well as awareness of low-risk drinking guidance, and can also reduce alcohol consumption.
In the U.S., the decision to update the current warning label will be made by Congress. Here at home, Brazeau says a Senate committee will start studying his bill later this year. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
A wrestling legend is being celebrated for pushing the limits of the sport. Sweet Daddy Siki died on New Year's Eve. The American-Canadian with deep ties to Toronto is also fondly remembered for his leaping drop kicks, bright blonde hair, and sequined robes.
Sweet Daddy Siki directly influenced one of the biggest stars in the world today because he was a mentor to Rocky Johnson, who was another Toronto wrestler, originally from out in Nova Scotia. But then his son goes on to become Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, one of the biggest stars in the world. So if you look at those early matches of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his boots that he's wearing are a direct lineage to Sweet Daddy Siki because they have the cutout at the back of the boot. And that's what Siki wore. And then that's what Rocky Johnson wore. So that's what The Rock wore. So there's a very obvious example of Sweet Daddies there. But, there's so many other examples.
Siki was born Elkin James in Texas and came to Toronto in the 1960s. He's widely credited for helping break down racial barriers in professional wrestling. Now, James was also a U.S. Army veteran and country music artist, even hosting karaoke nights in Leslieville during his later years. Sweet Daddy Siki was 91 years old. We are heading into a short break. We're back with you in 3 minutes. A woman from Oakville is behind a community effort sending hundreds of tents for people in Gaza. She got financial support from across Ontario and Quebec, and she says she also got a boost from Canadian Tire.
We received feedback from Gaza that this is one of the greatest tents that they have received because it's sealed from the bottom. So water leaks are not going to get into the tents, bugs are not going to get inside. And it's a Canadian product, and we're very proud that we're sending Canadian products.
She says the Canadian Tire in Milton offered a discount to buy the tents. She says she's now bought $400,000 worth, which are then sent from Oakville to Jordan before landing in Gaza. Royal Jordanian Airlines gave free space for the first 900 tents. This shipment, though, will be the last under that agreement, but the organizer says she's determined to keep up the donations. Meantime, in Gaza, Israel unleashing more airstrikes, continuing this week's upsurge in attacks. Medics say strikes on 2 homes in Gaza City left 17 people dead. More were feared trapped under the rubble. In all, officials say 70 people were killed Saturday, bringing the total since Thursday to more than 180. Funeral services have now begun for U.S. President Jimmy Carter. A bell rang 39 times honoring the 39th president. People lining the streets to pay their respects to the former leader. The motorcade made a stop at the state capitol building where he served as a senator and governor before finally ending at the Carter Center that he founded to fight disease and promote world peace. His son spoke at the service as a choir sang in the background. A state funeral is planned for Thursday. A longtime friend of the late former U.S. president and author of 98 Reasons to Thank Jimmy Carter spoke with CBC News from Kingston, Ontario.
When I was about 17 or so, I was at my local mall in Scarborough, Cedarbrae Mall, at the Coles bookstore, and there was President Carter's memoirs, Keeping Faith. And I bought them. And for whatever reason, it spoke to me, particularly his diary entries. And I wrote to him, and I told him how I felt and what my mom had said, and I got a handwritten note back. And it was just, a remarkable thing for a 17-year-old to receive back from a former president of the United States. So life went on. I was reading the New York Times one Sunday, and they were describing in the article about how President Carter taught Sunday school every Sunday. And it was open to the public, and then he would meet and greet all the guests from afar afterwards. So I read that, and about 45 minutes later, I had a return ticket to Atlanta. I convinced a skeptical friend, my friend Rick, to come with me, and 7 days later, we were, got to Atlanta Airport and rented a car and drove the 3 hours down to Plains, and we went to church, and I got to meet President Carter for the first time. And I wish I could tell you that I was this hard-bitten journalist with a bunch of questions for the former president, but no, I choked. I can't remember that, but I won't lie. And so I started to go back, and eventually he agreed, and he seemed quite intrigued that I only wanted to question him about his thoughts about Canada and his relations with Pierre Trudeau and Joe Clark. And I can't speak for him, but he seemed to appreciate that. And very passionate admirer of Canada.
All right, Sophia's back now talking about piles of snow, bitter cold. If there was any doubt, January is here. I mean, we're getting it pretty loud and clear.
You want the snow in December when you're in the Christmas spirit.
That's
you don't
true
really want
now.
it right now. We are watching this come down on the radars. Now, this is fantastic for the ski hills. Like, what a really great early season base. It is not the best skiing weather, but everyone's happy at Blue Mountain and at Horseshoe and Mount St. Louis Moonstone, especially for those of you north and west of the city. If you are driving that way, blowing, drifting snow, whiteout conditions, there is more snow to come for Sunday, as we mentioned. Now, any snow that you get in the GTA will be very minimal compared to these really strong bands of lake effect snow. Yes, please drive according to the conditions. What is happening here? You have this really thick layer in the upper levels of the atmosphere of this really cold air mass, about 20 degrees colder than these warm lake waters. The lakes that are mainly open and unfrozen are doing an awesome job at moderating this colder air for us. So it's a double-edged sword. We're not getting that bitter cold like the extreme cold right now in places like Dryden and Kenora, but instead, along with the feature presentation, the winds, we are getting this lake effect snow event. The winds have really been the main show. One of the windiest weeks of the year we had last week. Sustained winds around 20 to 30 kilometers an hour, and then the peak gusts anywhere from 50 to 80. This is a cold northwest wind. The cold is not going anywhere. In fact, it'll make an even deeper and southern push. Come Wednesday, we're talking wind chill values into the mid-minus 20s, especially for those of you in places like Eastern Ontario. Day by day, this just keeps going. Watch those cold purples come on down even farther to the south. Wednesday is really the cold day. This is the warmest it is going to get. It'll feel like minus 15 for the warmest, really bitter overnight lows. And actually the next couple weeks of January are going to be very much in this cold trough pattern, Shannon.
Okay, hot chocolate. Maybe that's what we need.
Lots of it.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. That's it for us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.